Question 16. Which of the following is the opposite of the word motivated? The options are composed, satisfied, apathetic, idle. Explanation of the question. The question asks to identify the word that has the opposite meaning to motivated. To answer this, we need to understand what motivated means and then consider the meanings of the given options. Motivated generally means having a reason or enthusiasm to do something, driven, eager, or having initiative. Answer: apathetic. Explanation of the answer. Let's look at each option. Composed. This means calm and in control of one's feelings, tranquil. This is not the opposite of motivated. Satisfied. This means contented with what one has, not desiring something more or different. While someone satisfied might not feel a strong need to act, it's not a direct opposite of being driven to act. Apathetic. This means showing or feeling no interest, enthusiasm, or concern. This directly contrasts with the eagerness and drive associated with being motivated. Idle. This means avoiding work, lazy. While an idle person might lack motivation, apathetic more accurately captures a lack of feeling or interest that underlies a lack of motivation. Therefore, apathetic is the best antonym for motivated among the given options because it describes a lack of interest or enthusiasm to act, which is the opposite of being driven or eager to act. Question number 17. Question: the two figures above share a common feature. One of the figures below does not share this same feature. Which figure below does not share the common feature? Explanation. First, let's carefully examine the two figures at the top. Each figure is a 3 by 3 grid. Some of the cells in the grid contain a circle with a diagonal line through it. Let's call this a crossed circle, and some cells are empty. Looking at the top left figure, we see crossed circles in the bottom 2 rows, specifically in all 3 columns of the bottom row and the left and middle columns of the second row from the bottom. The top row is empty. Now, let's look at the top right figure. We observe crossed circles in the top 2 rows, specifically in all 3 columns of the top row and the left and middle columns of the second row from the top. The bottom row is empty. The common feature between these two figures is that there are crossed circles in 2 adjacent rows, and in those 2 rows, the crossed circles occupy the left and middle columns. Now, let's analyze the 4 figures below to see which one does not have this feature. Bottom left figure. This figure has crossed circles in the bottom 2 rows, and in those rows, the crossed circles are in the left and middle columns. This figure shares the common feature. Bottom middle left figure. This figure has crossed circles in the top 2 rows, and in those rows, the crossed circles are in the left and middle columns. This figure shares the common feature. Bottom middle right figure. This figure has crossed circles in the top 2 rows. However, in these rows, the crossed circles are in the left and right columns, not the left and middle columns. This figure does not share the common feature. Bottom right figure. This figure has crossed circles in the bottom 2 rows, and in those rows, the crossed circles are in the left and middle columns. This figure shares the common feature. Analysis. The common feature identified in the top 2 figures is the presence of crossed circles in 2 adjacent rows, specifically occupying the left and middle columns of those rows. By examining each of the figures below, we found that 3 of them exhibit this feature, while 1 figure has crossed circles in the left and right columns instead of the left and middle columns in its 2 adjacent rows with crossed circles. Correct answer: the bottom middle right figure does not share the common feature. Question 18. You are responsible for mailing 50,000 letters. You must mail 50% of the total letters over the next 5 days. If you plan to mail 1/5 of this amount each day, what is the total amount that you plan to mail each day? The question asks to calculate the number of letters to be mailed each day based on a given total number of letters, a percentage to be mailed over 5 days, and a fraction of that amount to be mailed each day. Step 1. Calculate the total number of letters to be mailed over 5 days. You must mail 50% of 50,000 letters. Calculation: 50% times 50,000 equals 0.50 times 50,000 equals 25,000 letters. Step 2. Calculate the number of letters to be mailed each day. You plan to mail 1/5 of this amount each day. Calculation: 1/5 times 25,000 equals 5,000 letters per day. Answer: 5,000. Explanation of the answer: by first calculating the total number of letters to be mailed over the 5 days, which is 25,000, and then dividing that amount by 5, the number of days, we find that you plan to mail 5,000 letters each day. Question 19. Assumptions: all vice presidents and some directors work on the 12th floor. Some directors work on the 11th floor. Conclusion: the director of the engineering department works on the 10th floor. If the assumptions are true, is the conclusion incorrect, cannot be determined based on the information available, or correct? Explanation of the question: the question presents a set of assumptions and a conclusion. You need to determine if the conclusion is necessarily true based on the given assumptions. Analysis: the first assumption states that all vice presidents and some directors work on the 12th floor. This means there might be other directors who work elsewhere. The second assumption states that some directors work on the 11th floor. This confirms that not all directors are on the 12th floor. The conclusion states that the director of the engineering department works on the 10th floor. The assumptions provide information about where vice presidents and some directors work, 12th and 11th floors. However, there is no information given about the director of the engineering department or which floor they might work on. It's possible they work on the 10th floor, the 12th floor, if they are one of the some directors, the 11th floor, or any other floor. Answer: cannot be determined based on the information available. Explanation of the answer: the provided assumptions do not give any information about the location of the director of the engineering department. Therefore, we cannot definitively say whether the conclusion that they work on the 10th floor is correct or incorrect based solely on the given assumptions. The information is insufficient to make a determination. Question number 20. Question: the first figure is to the second as the third is to which below? Explanation: first to second figure, internal horizontal arrows pointing towards each other rotate 90 degrees to become vertical and point away from each other. Base shape changes from trapezoid to pentagon. Applying this to the third figure, the right pointing arrowhead inside the pentagon should also undergo a 90-degree rotation. Analyzing options. Option 1, right pointing arrowhead in a trapezoid, incorrect base and no rotation. Option 2, upward pointing arrowhead in a pentagon, 90-degree counterclockwise rotation. Option 3, left pointing arrowhead in a pentagon, 180-degree rotation. Option 4, downward pointing arrowhead in a pentagon, 90-degree clockwise rotation. The primary transformation is a 90-degree rotation of the internal element, and the base shape changes to a pentagon. Both upward and downward pointing arrowheads represent a 90-degree rotation. Considering a potential implied consistent rotation direction, e.g. clockwise, could explain horizontal inward to vertical outward, the right pointing arrowhead would become downward pointing. Correct answer: option 4, downward pointing arrowhead in a pentagon.